Ja, einen recht schönen guten Abend, liebe Zuschauer. Willkommen zum Krimi-Sommertheater hier in Jesten. Den Anfang dieser Reihe macht ein kleines
Hello, and welcome to Using DBase4 from Microvideo. My name is Barbara Johnson, and I'll be your guide for this course, in which we'll be learning all the basic procedures for using the latest version of the most popular microcomputer database program, DBase, in a series of easy-to-follow, step-by-step procedures. DBase4 is a powerful, comprehensive program that's capable of handling practically any data need, from short phone books to massive inventories. In fact, it's more accurate to call DBase4 a programming language. If you don't have any programming experience, don't worry. As you'll soon see, DBase4 has several different operating modes which make learning a breeze. While we won't cover each of the hundreds of features and options available, we will explore the most important ones and provide you with a solid foundation for understanding DBase4 as a whole. By the time you finish this course, you'll be comfortable enough to continue the learning process on your own. For those of you who wish to go on, an advanced learning system featuring the use of applications and DBase4's programming capabilities is also available for Microvideo. This videotape is accompanied by a floppy diskette and a workbook. The diskette contains all the practice files used in this course, both in their original form and as they should appear after each segment is completed, so you can check the accuracy of your work as you progress. The workbook contains written step-by-step instructions that duplicate every keystroke covered in the course, as well as instructions for additional interactive exercises. At the end of each segment, these exercises and a series of quizzes will help you hone your DBase4 skills. The workbook also contains some important DBase4 reference material, so you may want to keep it handy even after you finish the course. The learning system can be used in two ways. You can perform the examples along with me on the tape or complete them on your own after watching each segment. Since this is a video-based course, you can pause, rewind, fast forward, or stop the tape at any point you wish. You are always free to proceed at your own pace. The video portion of this course runs about 2 hours, but you should allow about twice that time to adequately cover all the material and familiarize yourself with the program. Our course is divided into 6 segments, each structured to create a natural learning progression. Since each segment builds on the information presented in the previous segments, we strongly suggest that you view them in order. Even if you're familiar with earlier versions of DBase, many important changes and additions appear in DBase4 that may make it seem to be a whole new program. A partial listing of these changes appears in your workbook. However, if you're a seasoned database pro, a complete listing of all the topics covered in our course also appears in the workbook, and you can use that to skip ahead to the segment that interests you. Briefly, our 6 segments are database introduction, getting started, creating a database, entering data, working with queries, and putting it on paper. Our course assumes that the complete DBase-4 program has already been loaded onto your hard drive in a directory called DBase. Here, we'll be working with an IBM PS2 with VGA graphics. Your system and keyboard may vary slightly in speed and appearance, but the DBase procedures will all be the same. Before moving on to our first segment, you should copy the contents of your student diskette into your DBase directory for easy access to the practice files we'll be using. The workbook contains instructions on how to do this. When you're done, you'll be ready for our first segment, Database Introduction. In this segment, we'll discuss some very basic concepts: what a database is, how to access DBase-4, the different user modes available in the program, DBase-4's screen appearance, how to use the help feature, and how to exit the program. Simply put, a database is any collection of information that has been organized in manipulation. Some typical databases found in an office environment would include inventory control systems, billing records, accounts receivable, and personnel files. But the most common and simplest example of a database is a phone book. In a phone book, information is organized and sorted according to last name, so we can easily find the phone numbers or addresses we need. While it's useful for that purpose, clearly this structure isn't very flexible. What if we had a phone number and wanted to know whose it was? Locating specific information becomes almost impossible when the database isn't organized for the task. Unlike a phone book, databases can be organized to allow information retrieval in a variety of ways. A common example of a more complex database would be a library card catalog. Here, we can locate books by their subject, author, or title. But what if our needs were even more specific? Suppose we wanted a list of books produced by a specific publisher during the year 1948. The data might be present in the card file, but again, the structure would be inadequate. When working with databases of any kind, the ease and speed of information retrieval depends only partly on what medium it's stored in, whether it's paper or a computer disk. Mostly, it depends on how the data is organized. Naturally, when the information is stored in a computer, the retrieval process becomes faster and easier. But beyond that, how the data is structured is a key ingredient. Fortunately, DBase-4 provides the necessary tools to create flexible, customized data structures that can respond to most any situation or data request that might arise. We'll begin our acquaintance with DBase-4 by accessing the program. In this course, we'll be starting DBase from the DOS prompt. First, we make sure that we're on the proper drive and in the directory that contains the DBase files. Our screen reads C prompt, indicating that we're on the C drive. Here, we've already followed the standard installation procedure, which has stored the program in a directory called DBase. If you've installed DBase with a different directory name, be sure to substitute it where appropriate throughout this course. To access the directory, we type cd space DBase, or whatever your directory is named, and press enter. Now, to start the program, we type DBase and press enter again. After a stunning title graphic, DBase displays its licensing agreement. We press enter and soon find ourselves at the control center of the menus system. DBase-4 can be operated on several levels. The menus system is the easiest to use for beginners, and we'll be working exclusively with it in our basic course. If your program has been configured differently and your screen is showing this dot prompt, just type assist and press enter. and the control center will shortly appear. As mentioned earlier, DBase4 can more accurately be referred to as a programming language than a program. This means it recognizes certain collections of words or commands as instructions to perform specific tasks. At the dot prompt, which we just saw, these commands can be entered directly just by typing them in. Long strings of commands can be stored and replayed as programs. Collections of related programs are stored as applications. The DBase programming language has over 200 commands which can be combined in thousands of ways. It's also possible to use additional SQL, or structured query language commands, with DBase. Don't worry, we won't be doing any programming in this course, but you should know that the menu system is, in effect, a complex application which the producers of this software have provided so that we can simply access DBase functions. As the name menus implies, the system operates through various menus, which are either of the pop-up or horizontal type. Choices on these menus either access additional menus or perform specific DBase operations. The screen we see now, called the control center, is the heart of the menu system. Let's take a look at what it's made of. The line of text at the top left of the control center is called the menu bar. It contains 3 choices: Catalog, Tools, and Exit, each of which represents an additional menu. The first menu, Catalog, allows us to retrieve different sets of data. All the information we create, the data we collect and organize, and the programs we write are stored in DBase4 as files. A catalog is a collection of DBase files related to one another. For example, a database file containing customer information might be contained in the same catalog as a database file containing sale information. We'll be talking more about catalogs in the next segment when we create one of our own. For now, to access the catalog menu, we hold down the Alt key and press the first letter of our choice, in this case, C. A pop-up menu now appears below the heading. From here, we can select additional choices by using the up or down arrow keys or by pressing the first letter of the choice. Choices currently available to us are displayed in highlighted text. Those that don't apply to the current situation are not highlighted and cannot be used. Once we've accessed one menu on the bar, we can move between menus with the right and left arrow keys located to the right of your keyboard. Since we've already accessed the menu bar, we press the right arrow once to see the Tools menu, then again to see the Exit menu. A press of Escape exits the menu completely. These menus contain options that allow us to create and modify catalogs, manage files, exit DBase, and customize the way DBase4 appears on our screen. We'll be seeing more of these menus shortly. The line just below the DBase4 Control Center title lists the name of the current catalog. DBase4 automatically displays the catalog used last. In this case, that's untitled, though yours might be different. In any case, the disk drive, path, and current catalog name are also listed. Notice that untitled has the file extension cat, which identifies it as a catalog file. DBase4 uses different extensions for each type of file it creates. A complete list of file extensions and their meanings appears in the workbook. Below the catalog, we see one large rectangular area that has been divided into 6 smaller boxes or panels, each with a different heading: Data, Queries, Forms, Reports, Labels, and Applications. These are the 6 different types of files DBase uses to store, organize, and print information, and these panels are the heart of the control center. Each panel can contain up to 200 files. Let's explore them, starting from the left. A data file contains the data itself. A query file allows us to display some or all of the data in a data file in a specific way, in response to a specific question, for example. A form file allows us to enter data into one or more data files in an easy manner. Report and label files allow us to format the data for printing. And finally, an application file stores the type of extended program we discussed earlier. Any file listed in these panels can be created, edited, or accessed by simply using the cursor keys to highlight the desired file name. Our basic course is concerned only with the first 5 panels, leaving applications for the advanced course. When a file name is highlighted, information about the file appears below the panels on 1 or 2 file information lines. The first line contains the file name. The second, an optional 1-line description of the file's contents. Currently, my highlight is on the Create option, and the file information line reads New File. If I press the down arrow once to highlight the first file, that information changes to reflect the file name, followed by a short 1-line description. Below the 2 file information lines is a list of various keys and the functions they perform in the control center. This is called the navigation line, and it changes depending on what part of DBase-4 we're currently using. We'll be using the functions listed here later in the course. The final component of the main screen appears just below the navigation line. Though it is currently blank, this message line, as it's called, will sometimes display additional information about options in DBase's menus. Finally, the current time is displayed in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Well, we've just been through a lot of information ourselves, and we haven't even accessed any data. In a program as comprehensive as DBase-4, it's easy to get lost at first, and many of us often need help getting our bearings. Fortunately, DBase-4 comes equipped with an extensive multi-level help feature that can quickly answer most any question we have about the program. As we can see by reading the navigation line, help is accessed by pressing F1. When we access help, DBase-4 will present us with information regarding whatever function we were engaged in. Since one of the files was still highlighted when we pressed F1, information on how to use files now appears in a box on the center of the screen. Below the information is a menu line with several options: Contents, Related Topics, or Print. Information on the message line tells us that F3 will take us to the previous help screen, F4 will take us to the next screen, and Escape will exit the help menu. Since Contents is already highlighted, let's select it by pressing Enter. A list of help topics appears. Let's highlight About the Control Center by pressing the up arrow once. As some of you may have noticed, ever since we accessed the table of contents, the function of F3 and F4 has changed. Reading the message line now, we see that at the help table of contents, F3 accesses more general help, while F4 will access more specific help. Since we're just starting out here, let's press F3 for general. A new listing with more general topics appears. When we try F3 again, though, the system beeps, telling us that this is as general as help gets. One of the listings is Help on Help. We can access it either by using the down arrow key or by pressing the first letter of the selection, H, and pressing Enter. Information about the help system is now displayed. A note in the lower right corner indicates that we can access additional help on help by pressing F4. Let's take a look at the other options on the help menu bar. Selecting the backup option would restore us to our previous help subject. The print option would allow us to send the information to a printer for hard copy. If we press R for related topics, we're presented with a new pop-up menu listing help for function keys and file extensions. To learn about how DBase-4 uses the 10 function keys, let's press Enter. We're shortly presented with a list of the basic functions that these keys perform. As we just saw with F3 and F4, these functions change depending on what part of DBase4 we're working in. Often, these changes will be noted in the message line. We'll be using a variety of these functions throughout the course. As we mentioned earlier, this help feature can pretty much handle any problems you may encounter. To exit help, we press Escape, and we're back at the control center. In our next segment, we'll access a sample catalog and look at some previously stored data. But for now, let's learn how to exit the program. First, we access the exit menu by holding Alt and pressing E. Now, to select Quit to DOS, we simply press Q or use an arrow key to highlight Quit to DOS and press Enter. We're returned to the DOS prompt. This brings us to the conclusion of our segment, during which we discussed what a database is, how to start DBase4, the different modes of DBase4, the control center, its screen appearance, how to use the help feature, and how to exit the program. Please pause the tape now and complete the additional exercises and quiz at the end of the first segment. Then when you're ready, you can begin segment 2. In the last segment, we discussed databases in general and took a quick look at the DBase4 menu system and control center. In this segment, we'll see what a database looks like in DBase4 as we learn how to change catalogs and access a sample database file. Then we'll discuss how entries in the database are broken up into fields and records, explore 2 different modes of data access, then learn to use the Go To menu to search for a specific set of information. To begin this segment and all the following segments, you should have DBase4 up and running at the control center, and the files on the student diskette already loaded into a directory named Student. If you need to get ready, pause the tape now and follow the instructions in the workbook to access DBase4 and load the practice files. Since DBase4 automatically presents us with whatever catalog was previously used by the program, to reach our sample catalog, we must first change that selection. This is done through the catalog menu. To access the menu, we hold down Alt and then press C for catalog, or just press F10. A list of catalog menu options appears. Many of these choices are intuitive and easy to understand. Since we'd like to use a different catalog, we can select Use a different catalog either by pressing U or, since it's already highlighted, Enter. When we use the letter, the pop-up menu or function occurs automatically. A box menu appears to the right of the screen, listing all the available catalogs. This list will vary depending on how many catalogs are in your system. Right now, we'd like to access a sample catalog called Books. Our previous choices have been made either through the first letter or moving the highlight and pressing Enter. But when selecting a catalog listing or any file listing, it's just a little different. We can still press B for the first letter of Books, and in my case, the proper choice has been highlighted. But suppose I now wanted to access Untitled. When I press U, the system beeps at me. That's because this menu works as a name search. I already started a search string when I pressed B, then added to it when I typed the U. The beep indicated that there's no catalog that starts with a BU. To end the search, I'd have to press one of the arrow keys, but instead, I'll continue spelling books by typing OOKS. Now, the entire name has been highlighted and should be on your screen as well. We can now retrieve this new catalog by pressing Enter. Notice that a few things on the screen have changed to reflect our selection. First, the catalog line now indicates that Books is active. Second, the files listed in the Panels section have changed to reflect the names of the files in the Books catalog. In this case, there are only 3 database files present: fiction, reference, and biography. Each of these files is a database, an organized collection of information, which we can now access. If we press the down arrow 3 times, the file information line now contains a description of the highlighted reference file, indicating that it contains a listing of available reference books along with a catalog number. When we press the up arrow to move the highlight to the fiction file, the description changes to indicate that the new file contains a list of fiction books. To actually access the highlighted file, we press Enter. A new menu appears, giving us the options Use File, Modify Structure, Order, or Display Data. We'd like to see the database, so let's press D. Presto! The screen changes and we now see the contents of the database file, a list of fiction books. The data is displayed in a chart format, generally referred to as a table. As a shortcut to accessing data from the control center, we could have simply highlighted the desired file name, then pressed the data key, F2, for exactly the same results. Let's take a look at the current screen. Just above the bottom of the screen, we see something new, a status bar. The status bar appears on many different screens and provides useful information about where we are in DBase. The first section tells us what screen or mode we're in this case, the browse mode. The second section indicates the file we've accessed, located in the student subdirectory of the C drive. The third section indicates that the highlight is currently on the first of 23 records. On the bottom of the screen, on the message line, the note View and Edit fields indicates what we can do on this screen. The main body of the screen containing the data is called the Browsing Work Surface. Work surface refers to the area of any DBase screen where data is actually viewed or manipulated. Here, information regarding our fiction books has been broken up into simple units. If we look at the tops of each column, we can see the type of information presented on screen: title, author, publisher, year, and subject. Just as the last names, addresses, and telephone numbers all appear in individual columns in a phone book, here all titles and authors appear in the same way. Each individual unit of information in a database, such as author or title, is called a field. A row of related fields, such as the title, author, publisher, year, and subject of a particular book, is called a record. So, in DBase 4, fields are grouped into records. Records are grouped into database files, and related files are grouped into catalogs. Now that we've learned how to access a database file, it might be handy to know how to move around in one. A highlighted field indicates our current position in the file, in this case, the first field in the first record, the title Bell Jar. To move from record to record, we use the up and down arrow keys. For example, pressing the down arrow once moves the highlight from the Bell Jar to the first field of the second record, Poems of John Milton. Pressing the down arrow again takes us to the first field of the third record, Left Hand of Darkness, while pressing the up arrow once returns us to Poems of John Milton. Common sense might dictate that the right and left arrow keys would move the highlight horizontally to additional fields, but when we press the right arrow, rather than moving to the author field, a small cursor within the highlight moves from the P to the O in Poems. Rather than moving through fields, the left and right arrow keys allow us to edit the information within a field. So, how do we move horizontally to the next field? We use the Tab key. Pressing Tab once takes us to the author field of the record, in this case, Milton John. When we press Tab again, the highlight moves to the publisher field, in this case, Washington Press. To move back to the left, we use Shift-Tab, also known as the back tab. To see how it works, we hold Shift and press Tab once, and we're back to Author. Holding Shift and pressing Tab again returns us to the title column. Another way to move forward between fields is by pressing Enter, which takes us back to the Author field again. Currently, we're seeing the database file in what's called the Browse mode, which allows us to see many records at once. On screen, we can see simultaneously information from 17 separate records, but most databases contain more than that. To access additional records in the Browse mode, we press the Page Down key once, and an additional screen of data appears with 6 more records. In the case of our small sample database, this is the last screen, but database files can contain thousands of records and, consequently, many screens of information. Page Up would move us up one screen at a time, in this case back to our first screen. But let's take a look at a few more ways to move around. By holding the Control key and pressing Page Down, we move the highlight to the same field in the last record in the database, in this case, Alan Woody. Pressing Home once moves us to the first field of the current record. Holding Control and pressing Page Up moves us to the same field in the first record of the database file, the bell jar. Now that we're a little more acquainted with browsing through data, let's take a look at the browsing menu bar on the top line of the screen. We make selections on the menu bar the same way we did at the control center. Holding Alt and pressing R, or pressing the menu key, F10, will access the record menu. From here, we can add new records, mark records for deletion, or erase all the fields in a record. Pressing the right arrow once takes us to the Fields menu, which is used to control the fields that will appear on the browsing screen. Pressing it again takes us to the Go To menu, which we'll see more of shortly. And another press takes us to the Exit menu, which we can use to return to the control center. To return to the browsing work surface from anywhere on the menu bar, we press Escape, and our highlight reappears right where we left it. As I mentioned, the Browse mode allows a simultaneous view of many records. As we'll see later, we can also enter and change data in the file from here. In some situations, though, the Browse mode may be inadequate for our needs. For example, it would seem from looking at the current screen that each fiction record contains just 5 fields ending with subject. Pressing End, however, takes us to the last field in the current record and reveals a 6th field, Register Number, which was pushed off the screen by the width of the other fields. In a database that has, say, 10 or 20 fields, we'd have to move through several screens just to see all the fields for one record. Options on the field menu here would allow us to freeze and lock certain fields on screen so that they're always visible no matter how far left or right we move the cursor. But in situations where we'd like to see all the fields for a single record at the same time, DBase4 also provides us with an edit mode, which we can reach simply by pressing the data key F2. Let's do so now. And here we are on the Edit Mode work surface. Notice that all the fields for our record are displayed simultaneously, but that only one record can be seen at a time. The menu bar is practically identical to the one on the Browse screen, except that the Fields menu is missing and the word Edit appears where Browse once was on the status bar. Another difference is that the message line is now blank. There are also a few small differences in the way we access additional records and fields. In the Edit mode, we still use Tab or Return to move us through the fields. Pressing Tab once moves us to the second field, Author. Now, however, if we press the down arrow, rather than moving to the next record, we access the third field, Publisher. Pressing the down arrow 3 more times brings us to the bottom of the first record. From here, if we press the down arrow again, we do indeed move to the second record, the Poems of John Milton. To move quickly through the records, we use the page up and page down keys. Page down takes us to the third record, and page up back to the second. Holding Control and pressing page down still takes us to the last or bottom record in the file, just as holding Control and pressing page up still takes us to the first or top record. Despite these minor differences, any functions performed in the Browse mode can also be performed in the Edit mode, and vice versa. The basic choice is whether we wish to view several records at once or all the fields of a single record. In any case, it's very easy to move between the two modes using F2. Pressing F2 now takes us right back to the Browse mode, and pressing it again takes us back to the Edit mode. Before we exit the database file and conclude the segment, let's take a look at one more way to move through data. We'll be using the Edit mode for our example, but these same steps work in Browse as well. Both modes come equipped with a Go To menu, which allows us to access specific records in a file. We can see the menu simply by holding Alt and pressing G. Some of our choices here are obvious. Top record would take us to the first record in a file, while last record would take us to the bottom record. Record number, however, would take us to whatever number record we indicated. Since there are 23 records in this database file, that number would have to be somewhere between 1 and 23. Likewise, Skip allows us to move forward in the database by a certain number of records. The preset value here of 10 would move us ahead 10 records, but we can change that number to any amount. The options on the lower half of the menu are even more powerful. These search features allow us to locate specific data, either forwards or backwards from our current location in the database. Let's take a moment to see how it works. Suppose we wanted to locate the record for a book called Farewell, My Lovely, in order to find the author or publisher. To see if it is listed in this database, we'll use the search feature. First, we make sure that the cursor is located in the field we're searching, in this case, the title field, which is already highlighted. Next, we press the down arrow 4 times to access the second half of the menu. Notice that the last line, Match Capitalization, is set to Yes. This means that our search will only present us with an exact match of capital and lowercase letters. If we fail to capitalize Farewell, My Lovely in the same way it's listed in the database, the search won't find it. To select a forward search, we press Enter or F. A new box appears for us to type our request in. Let's type Farewell as the beginning of the title, being careful to capitalize the F. Then type an asterisk. This asterisk acts as a wildcard, so the system will now search for any title that begins with Farewell, regardless of what follows. Now, to activate the forward search, we just press Enter. In a few seconds, the complete record for Farewell My Lovely appears on the screen. The search feature is particularly handy for locating specific records among vast amounts of data, and the use of the wildcard asterisk allows for flexibility in the search process. Well, we've just about completed our first exploration of a DBase4 database file. To return to the control center from either the browse or edit mode, we press Escape. Now, from the control center, Alt-E and Q will end this DBase session and our second segment. In this segment, we learned what a database file looks like, how to change catalogs, and how to access a sample database file. We also discussed how units in the database are broken up into fields and records, explored 2 different modes of data access, browse and edit, and learned how to use the Go To menu to search for a specific record. Please complete the exercises and quiz in your workbook and rejoin us for segment 3, in which we'll design and create a catalog and database file of our own. In this segment, we'll be looking at several ways to enter data into our database files. Since there are 2 major modes of data entry, this segment has been subdivided into 2 modules. Module 1, Data Entry with Browse and Edit, will cover entering and editing data using the Browse and Edit modes. Module 2, Forms, will cover the creation and use of data entry forms to customize the data entry process. If you've completed the exercises in the workbook, you should now have the station catalog accessed, and 4 files should appear in the data panel: customers, suppliers, sales, and purchases. If you haven't completed these exercises but wish to follow along with me on the tape, access the pre-prepared catalog named Stat4 by pressing Alt-C, U, highlighting Stat4 with the down arrow, and pressing Enter. As you can see, the file names are slightly different, each one ending with a 4 to indicate our segment number, but the contents are as they should be. In a moment, we'll start our first module, Data Entry with Browse and Edit. Welcome back. To begin our data entry, let's assume we have paper files containing information about our first 3 customers, and we'd like to transfer the data to our DBase4 files. Since the information contains the customer name and address, we'd like to add it to the customer or cust4 database file. Since the highlight is already in the data panel, we simply use the arrow keys to highlight the proper file name. Now, when we press the data key, F2, the edit work surface is automatically accessed. Previously, we were able to toggle between the edit and browse screens by pressing F2 again. But if we do so, nothing happens. That's because our database file is empty. The browse mode can only be used after we've entered at least 1 record into the file. Let's do that now. The cursor already appears in field 1, customer number. Since this is our first customer, let's enter the number 001. When we reach the end of the field, DBase4 beeps and the cursor reappears in the second field, customer name. Here, let's type crazy copy. As you can see, I forgot to capitalize crazy and copy. This is no problem since DBase4 provides not 1, but 2 editing modes to correct the inevitable key slips. If I'd accidentally accessed the next field, I could move up to this field using the up arrow, but since I haven't, a quick press of home returns the cursor to the beginning of the field. Now, I'll hold Shift and press C, and the lowercase c is overstruck by a capital. That's because DBase is currently operating in its type-over editing mode. Those of you familiar with word processors probably already know that type-over means that newly typed characters will erase what's already on the screen. DBase 4 can also operate in the insert mode, in which characters are not erased, but pushed to the right to make space. To switch to the insert mode, we simply press the insert key. The far right of the status bar now reads INS to indicate the mode we're working in. Now, let's change that second C. First, we move the cursor 5 spaces to the right by pressing the right arrow 5 times. Now, when we hold Shift and press C, rather than erasing the old character, 2 C's now appear on screen. To erase the extra C, we press Delete once. The backspace key also erases characters, but to the left rather than directly above the cursor. Let's exit the insert mode by pressing Insert again. To return to the end of the field and finish the name, we press End, then type comma, INC, period. For our next field, we press Tab, Enter, or the down arrow, and type 123 Elm Street. Moving along, we press Tab or Enter again. Then type Delgar, Tab, NY in caps, and the zip code 10469. Our crazy copy contact is Joe Smith, so we type that in. And we're done. To begin a second record, we just press Enter or the down arrow. A blank record now appears. The status bar now indicates that this is the second of 2 records. Now, pause the tape and enter the information for Barry's Bolts Limited, listed in the workbook. Try to remember the rules we just discussed, and if you get lost, follow the step-by-step instructions in your workbook. All done? Your screen should look like this. As in segment 1, we can move through our collected records with the page up and page down keys. Page up takes us back to customer 1, page down to customer 2. In a 2-record database, it's very easy to reach the end and add a few more records. But what if there were 200 records instead of 2? Using page down in that case would certainly be time-consuming. A much easier way to skip down to the final record is by using the record menu. If we hold Alt and press R, then choose A for Add New Records, no matter how many records are stored in the file, we're instantly presented with a clean slate to begin our work. Now that we have some data in our database file, let's add our 3rd customer record in the Browse mode. We press F2. We see the familiar browsing work surface. To begin our new record, we press the down arrow once, and Y to indicate we'd like to add a record. Other than the horizontal appearance of the screen, the process is identical. First, we type 003, then Spacely Sprockets. Tab. 104 Future World. Disney. Tab. CA90610. G period Jetson. And we're done. To return to the control center, we hold Alt, press E, then press E again. When exiting the browse mode this way, our entries are saved automatically. In case someone else will be working with the catalog, it's a good habit to deactivate or close database files after we're finished working with them. In the data panel, any files that appear above the line are active, those below inactive. To close our current database, we simply press Enter and C for Close. The file now appears below the active line. This brings us to the end of our first module, in which we covered how to enter and edit data in the browse and edit modes. In the workbook, you'll find a quiz and additional exercises which will ask you to add additional records to our supply database. Please complete these before going on to the next module. In this module, we'll cover the creation and use of a customized data entry screen called a form. While the browse and edit modes provide a reasonably flexible method of data entry, DBaseIV also allows the user to create a customized screen for the same task. Creating a form allows us to rearrange the fields on a screen, add boxes and lines for emphasis, omit certain fields to simplify the display, or add additional calculated fields. One might use a data entry form to create an electronic screen that closely resembles an existing paper form, or simply to make the data entry process more aesthetically pleasing. In this module, we'll be creating a relatively simple form for our sales database. While we won't explore each and every design possibility, we will provide a strong sense of the options available. Our first step is to activate or open the Sales or Sale4 database by highlighting it with the down arrow and pressing Enter twice. The file name now appears above the line in the panel, indicating that it's active. To create a form for the active database, we move the highlight to Create on the Forms panel by pressing the right arrow twice. Now, when we press Enter, the cursor reappears on the Layout menu of the Form Design screen. The Quick Layout option will reproduce the Sales Database record entry screen on the work surface all at once. After that, creating the form will simply be a question of rearranging and slightly altering the existing fields. To activate the Quick Layout feature, we press Enter. In a few seconds, our 5 fields appear. If we take a look at the way fields have been displayed on the work surface, we notice that character fields appear as a series of X's, while numeric fields appear as 9s, sometimes with a decimal place. Notice that INS automatically appears on the status bar to tell us that we're in the insert mode. This is so we don't accidentally erase any important fields while working on the form. The flashing cursor above the D in Date indicates our location on the screen. In some ways, the form design work surface operates similarly to a word processor. Using the cursor and the keyboard, we can type in whatever information we'd like to appear on the form. By extending the cursor onto existing information, we can select different screen elements and move or copy them wherever we wish on the screen, as indicated on the message line. For example, the form might look a bit nicer if the information appeared more in the center of the screen. To move the entire record entry form as a block, we first must select it by pressing the down arrow once to highlight the D. Now, to extend the highlight, we first anchor it by pressing Select, or as shown on the message line, F6. We press the down arrow twice so the cursor reaches the widest field. End, and the down arrow twice again. and our record has been completely highlighted. To complete our selection, again as indicated on the message line, we press Enter. Now, let's reposition the data by pressing F7, which, according to the message line, allows us to move the selected text. The position of the highlighted square will now determine where the text will be moved to. We can move the square using the arrow, tab, or back tab keys, then complete the move by pressing Enter again. To center it more on the screen, let's hold Shift. Press Tab once, press the down arrow once, and finally press Enter. The data form reappears in its new location. Pressing Escape removes the highlight. Now, with the cursor on the D in Date, let's alter the field name slightly. When creating a database file, we're greatly restricted in the number of characters we can use to name a field. Here, in the Form Design field, we have much more room to clarify the nature of the field, and we can use upper and lowercase letters. For example, let's press the right arrow once and type ATE space of space sale colon space space. We then press Delete 3 times to erase the extraneous characters. Now, let's add some space between the lines of the form to make it easier to read. We use the cursor keys to highlight the C in Cuss Number. Then press F6 for Select again, followed by the down arrow, and the down arrow twice, and press Enter. With the information highlighted, we press F7 for Move. And to create some space between the date and the rest of the information, we press the up arrow twice, hold Shift, and press Tab 3 times. Then press Enter. A message appears asking us if we'd like to delete the covered text or fields. Since we're moving what we've covered, we press Y for yes. And the block is moved without losing any data. Escape removes the highlight. Getting the hang of it? You should pause the tape now and follow the instructions in the workbook to create one more space and change the remainder of the field headings. Then return here. All done? Your screen should look like this. Now that we've enhanced our field names, let's give our form a title. First, let's move the cursor by pressing the up arrow 5 times. And Home. From here, let's type the heading Sales Record. The Form Design screen also has a few menus which perform other functions similar to word processors. For example, we can use the Word menu to center this line of text on the page. To do so, we first highlight the text by pressing Home, F6, and End. Next, we hold Alt and press W to access the Word menu. Then P to select Position, and C for Center. The text is instantly centered on the screen. In addition to rearranging existing fields, we can also add what's called a calculated field to the form for additional information. A calculated field uses a mathematical calculation involving numbers or the data in any set of existing fields to determine its value. For example, one piece of information we might want on a sales record would be the total amount of the sale, which can be arrived at by multiplying the number of units by the price per unit. Let's see how it's done. First, to reach the bottom of the form, we press the down arrow 11 times. then tab 3 times. We type the new field name here, total sale, :space space. With the cursor positioned at the point where we'd like the new field to begin, we access the field menu by holding Alt and pressing F. Next, we choose A for Add Field. 2 panels appear, one with a list of existing fields and another with an option to create a calculated field. Notice the names and proper spelling of the 2 fields we'd like to multiply, no units and price unit. This will be important in a moment. To create a calculated field, we press the right arrow to highlight Create, then press Enter. A new menu appears to help us define our new total field. With the highlight on Name, we press Enter. Type Total, then press Enter again. Skipping the optional description, we press the down arrow twice. To reach Expression, which here refers to the mathematical expression that will define our new field, and press Enter. In DBase-4, multiplication is indicated by an asterisk, so to create our expression, we type no units, asterisk, price unit. Being careful to spell the field names correctly, since even one letter out of place will render the expression unacceptable. We press Enter to end the expression, then the down arrow once. To reach the template option, which allows us to define the display width and data type. In the template option, the series of 9s and a decimal point indicates the length of our numeric field. It seems that the field may be too long. To shorten it a bit, we press Enter, Home. Delete 3 times, then Enter again to enter the information. We've finished defining our additional fields, so as noted on the screen below, we hold Control and press End to move on. After a second, our new field appears on the screen. When we start to enter data on this form, we'll see how the new field calculates totals for us. Now, to tie our new form together neatly, let's draw a box around it. First, let's position the cursor at the spot where we'd like the upper left-hand corner of the box to be by pressing the up arrow 13 times. And Shift-Tab 5 times. To draw a box, we hold Alt and press L for the layout menu. Then, appropriately, press B for box and S for single line. A message at the bottom of the screen tells us to position the cursor in the upper left-hand corner of where we'd like the box to be. Since we're already there, we press Enter to mark the spot. To extend the box to the right, we press Tab 7 times and the left arrow 4 times. To bring the box down, we press the down arrow 15 times. With a press of Enter, our box and our form is complete. 2 small tasks remain. Tasks you may recall from our lesson on database files, adding a description and saving our work. To complete the next to last task, we hold the Alt key and press L. Then move the highlight down 3 times to Edit Description, where we press Enter. Now we type sales record with date, customer ID, item, and total sale. And press Enter to end the description. Finally, we hold Alt and press E for exit, then S for save. To name our form, we type Sale Form and press Enter. It takes a while for DBase to read all the information into the file and make sure that there have been no errors, but after several seconds, we are returned to the control center with the highlight sitting on our newly created sales form. To use our new form to enter data, we press Enter, then D for Display Data. Our form screen appears. For the first field, we type 012790 for the date, 003 for the customer ID, then number 2 pencils for item, .25 for price, noting that the decimal appears in the correct spot, and 33 for number of units. Pressing Enter takes us to the next blank field, but if we press Page Up, we can see that our calculated field has been filled out for the dollar amount of the total sale. Now that we've seen how this works, let's exit the form by holding Alt, pressing E, then pressing E again for exit, to return to the control center and the conclusion of this module and segment. In this module, we covered the creation and design of a custom form. We also learned how to add additional calculated fields and how to enter data using our new form. In the first module, we covered data entry and editing using the browse and edit modes. The exercises and quiz in the workbook will help you to sharpen your data entry skills, so we suggest you complete them before proceeding on to Segment 5, Queries. See you there. Now that we're all seasoned data entry pros, in this segment we'll be covering the creation and use of queries, the primary manner used by DBase4 to manipulate and display data in a variety of ways. Up until now, we've only been able to access our data through the browse and edit modes, but suppose we wanted to view only select data. Suppose, for example, we wanted to see a list of all the orders from a specific customer in our sales database. A query gives us a variety of options to select specific data for display. There are two major types of queries, and this segment has been divided into two modules to reflect that. Module 1, View Queries, covers the creation and design of query files that allow us to create specific data lists by sifting through or filtering large amounts of data in one or more database files. View queries, since they don't change the data stored in our files, are considered passive. Module 2, Update Queries, covers the creation and use of query files that do change our files and shows us how to use queries to edit, add, or delete many records at one time. The catalog we'll be working with in this segment is called Station 5 and can be found in your student directory. The databases in this catalog are identical in structure to the ones we've been working with, but we've taken the liberty of adding additional records to them for the sake of our examples here. To prepare for this segment, let's change the catalog by pressing F10. Then U for Use a Different Catalog. Using the down arrow, highlight Station 5 and press Enter. Now we're ready to begin Module 1, View Queries. Suppose, for example, we'd like to see a list of all the items we sell that are supplied by Herald Lumber. Our supply database file contains the information, but it also contains a lot of other information that we don't necessarily want to see. To filter out the unwanted information and just see what we need, we can create a view query, which will sort and display desired information in our database file. The data we see in the view query is stored as a temporary file in the active memory of our computer, and so never affects the information stored in the database file itself. To begin, let's move the SUP5 database file into the active mode by highlighting it and pressing Enter twice. To create a query file for this database, we move the cursor to the Create field in the Query panel by pressing the right arrow and Enter. In a few seconds, we're placed on the work surface of the query design screen. Let's see what we've got. The row of boxes under the bar menu at the top of the screen is called the file skeleton. Together, they represent the structure of the supply database file. The file name is displayed in the first box on the left, while the next three boxes contain the names of the first three fields. A small arrow at the edge of the address field, pointing off-screen to the right, indicates that the additional fields have scrolled off-screen to the right. To see these fields, we press Tab 4 times. Now the city field appears on screen, while field 1 has scrolled off to the left. Pressing Tab twice more takes us to the zip code, while Home returns us to the beginning of the skeleton. These boxes effectively list the pieces currently available for use in constructing our view query. Meanwhile, just above the navigation line, there's a nearly identical series of boxes. This is called the view skeleton and represents all the data that will appear in our view. When we begin designing a view query, all the fields from the selected database file also appear as named boxes in the view skeleton. The basic difference between the skeletons at the moment is the first box, which here on the bottom contains the view file name, currently untitled. Creating a view query is not unlike piecing together a puzzle. We use the pieces on the top half of the screen to assemble the view on the bottom half. Since all the fields are in the view, but we only want a few of them, we need to decide which ones to remove. Since we want a list of items supplied by Herald Lumber, we'd like to keep the first field, item, and the next one, supplier. But that's actually about it. To remove the other fields, first we'll access them with the Tab key, then delete them from the view using the F5 key. Pressing Tab 3 times takes us to the address field in the file skeleton. To remove it from the view skeleton, we press F5. After a delightful visual graphic, the address disappears from the view skeleton and the fields to the right move over to fill up the space. We press Tab and F5 again to remove city from the view skeleton. Press them again to remove state, then once more to remove zip code. Item and supplier are now the only fields remaining in the view skeleton. By the way, if we wanted to restore a missing field view, we just highlight the field in the file skeleton and press F5 again to restore it. For now, though, to see what we've got so far, let's press F2, the data key. In a few seconds, a list of suppliers and items from the supply database appears in the Browse mode, unless you last use the Edit mode, in which case you'll have to press the data key F2 again to switch. While the list is certainly cleaner than it was, it still lists products from all our suppliers. To further hone our query so it only displays the products from one supplier, let's return to the design screen by pressing Shift F2. What we want to do now is eliminate all those suppliers except one, say Harold Lumber, from the view. To do that, we have to define what's called a filter condition for that field. To see how that works, let's first highlight the supplier field with the press of Home and tab twice. The space below the field name is where we can type in our filter conditions. These conditions often resemble arithmetic operations. The less than, greater than, equal to, or not equal to symbols can be used to isolate a specific range of data. In our example here, we only want to display records where the supplier field is equal to Harold Lumber. To enter that information, we type the equal sign, followed by Harold Lumber in quotes. Be careful to reproduce the proper spelling and capitalization, since those quotation marks tell DBaseIV to search for an exact match in the field. Now, when we press F2 and wait a moment, a list of the 4 products we order from Harold appear on the screen. We press Shift F2 to return to the design screen. Let's make one more simple change to our query. It might be nice to sort the items in this list by alphabetical order. To do so, first we access the item field with Shift-Tab. Then the field menu with Alt-F. From here, we press S for Sort on this field, and we're presented with 4 sorting options. The ascending and descending ASCII modes sort upper and lowercase letters separately. In other words, capital A through Z followed by a separate list for lowercase a through Z, while the dictionary options simply sort all records from A through Z ascending or Z through A descending, regardless of case. Let's choose ascending dictionary order instead by pressing the down arrow twice. Then enter. An abbreviation of our selection appears under the item field. If we wanted to change our sort decision, we would simply repeat the preceding steps. To see our completed query, we press F2. After a few moments, there it is, an alphabetical listing of all the products we order from Harold Lumber. Note that the pound sign in number 2 pencil precedes the item starting with letters. You can imagine how handy the query process would be for databases with hundreds of entries. Once the query file is saved, we are free to add additional records to our supply database, and whenever we re-access the query, it will present us with an updated listing. Shift F2 takes us back to the design screen. Before we save the query, let's add a file description. We hold Alt and press L for the layout menu. Then E for the file description. Here, we type products ordered from Harold Lumber, and press Enter. To simply save the file, we could use the Save option on the Layout menu, but to save and exit to the Control Center at the same time, we press Alt-E and S and type in our file name, Harold, and Enter. After the query is saved, we're returned to the Control Center with our new query file appearing in the appropriate panel. Well, that was fun. But suppose we wanted a view query to draw data from more than one file. For example, that we wish to display our customers' names along with the type and number of orders they've made over the last year. Unfortunately, customer name is in the customer database file, while their orders are listed in the sales database file. However, as we mentioned during our discussion on database file design, when 2 databases share a field name, it's possible to link them together and view the data from both files. Our customer database and sales database both have a field named cus number, used to identify customers. By using this field as a linking device, we can create a single query that will display fields from both files. Let's try it. First, we access one of the two database files by highlighting Customer and pressing Enter twice. Now, we press the right arrow and Enter to create a new query. Since we'll also be working with the sales database, we'll want to see that here as well. To bring up a second database on the work surface, we use an option in the Layout menu. We hold Alt and press L. Then type A to select Add File to Query. Using the down arrow, we highlight the sales file in the listing and press Enter. After a few seconds, a second file skeleton appears. Notice, however, that only the fields from our first database, Customer, appear in the view skeleton. We'll be adding the fields from Sales shortly. First, though, in order to successfully link data in the two files, we must type an identical example variable in each associated field. This variable is simply a placeholder that tells DBase4 that the files should be linked. As long as it's identical in both files, it doesn't matter what it is. Our linking field is cus number, so we press Tab twice to reach it in the sales database. Now, let's type a simple example variable, hello. We'll have to type hello again in the cus number field of the other database file. According to the message line, we can use F3 and F4 to move between skeletons. When we press F3, the cursor reappears in the customer database. Tab takes us to the cus number field. Now we type hello again. The files are now linked. With the files linked, we can now proceed to construct our query freely using fields from either database. Since we just want a list of our customers' names along with their order information, we'll now remove some unwanted fields from the view skeleton. Tab twice takes us to the address field. F5 deletes it from the query. Tab and F5 deletes city, and again deletes state, again for zip code, and once more for contact. This leaves us with the customer name and number in our view. Now let's press F4 to move to the sales skeleton and select which fields from here we'd like to add to our query. Tab takes us to item, which we would like to include. The function key F5, while it will remove fields that are already in the query skeleton, will also add those that are not already there. A press of F5 this time adds the field to our query. Tab twice takes us to no units, which we also add with F5. Finally, to distinguish each record, we press Home, Tab, and F5 to add the date field to the view. Taking a look at our view skeleton, we see that the data is correct, but slightly out of order. It might make more sense if the date appeared first. Fortunately, we can move fields in a view to change their order. Let's see how. A press of F4 takes us down to the view skeleton. We press End to reach the date field. To move it, we press F7, the move key. Once the field is highlighted, we can move it where we want by using the Tab key. In this case, we press Shift-Tab 4 times, followed by Enter, to place date in the first position. To see how we've done so far, let's press F2 for data. After a few moments, we're presented with a list of our customers and the orders for the year. The dates aren't in any particular order, but we'll be fixing that in a moment. Shift F2 returns us to the design screen for some final changes. First, we don't really need the cus number field displayed in the view, since we have the name to identify the customer with, so let's delete it with Tab and F5. Of course, our data is still linked even though the linking field doesn't appear in the view. Now let's alter the query to display our information in chronological order. Our date field is in the sales database, so we press F3 to reach it. Then Alt-F for the field menu, S for sort on this field, and the down arrow twice for ascending dictionary order. And enter. A press of F2 shows us the data according to our current query. We're almost done for now, so let's press Shift F2 to return to the design screen and add a description. We press Alt-L and E. Then type total yearly orders by customer for the description. And press Enter. We now press Alt-E and S, followed by Y total for the file name. And enter. And we're soon back at the control center with the Y total query file present on the panel. Up until now, the only view queries we've created have used a single condition to sort the data, such as name equals Harold Lumber, but it's also possible to combine multiple filter conditions to produce even more specific queries. Suppose, for example, that we wanted a list of only those sales to our client, Manic Incorporated, where the orders were for more than 10 units. Rather than create a new view query, we can simply make some alterations to our existing yearly total file. Since it's still highlighted from the last exercise, we just press Enter to access it. Now we choose M for Modify, and we're back on the Query Design work surface. Our first condition will be to select data where the customer is equal to Manic Incorporated. To do that, we press F3, Home, and Tab twice to take us to the name field. Now, as we did with Harold, we type equals Manic Incorporated in quotes. Now, of that Manic Incorporated data, we'd only like to see orders that are for more than 10 units. To enter that second condition, we press F4 and End to take us to the No Units field and type the greater than symbol, followed by 10. These two conditions are cumulative. In other words, this query will now only display data where the name is equal to Manic Incorporated and the unit order is more than 10. We could go on to add as many more conditions as we like, selecting only orders from the first half of the year, for example. For now, though, let's see our query view by pressing F2. After a few seconds, we're presented with the only sale record where Manic Incorporated's order exceeded 10 units. Shift F2 returns us to the design surface. In addition to AND conditions, DBase can also filter the data so that we'll receive a list of orders that are either from Manic Incorporated or are greater than 10. To use the OR condition, we must enter our filters in what's called a condition box. As a first step, however, we have to delete our current conditions, which we do by pressing Ctrl-Y. F3 and Ctrl-Y again. Alt-C accesses the condition menu, and A presents us with a condition box. This box allows us to add multiple conditions that will filter the entire database. Conditions entered here are in addition to any conditions entered for individual fields. So, if for example we hadn't erased our earlier filters, they would still be in effect. To enter our new condition, in the condition box we type name equals Manic Incorporated. A period, the word or, then another period, followed by no units greater than 10. Being careful to correctly type the field names and to copy the correct capitalization for the customer name. Or is set off by periods to tell DBase that it is the condition portion of our filter. We enter the condition box by pressing Enter. To see our extended filter, we press F2. In a few moments, we're presented with the appropriate data. Since OR is non-exclusive, the list includes both the records where the name is equal to Manic Incorporated and the records where the orders are greater than 10. To return to the control center, we press Escape, and since we don't want to save this new query, N for No. By adding further filters and links, we would be able to determine such things as each customer's total order for the year and even yearly profits. Linked queries provide a wealth of additional data possibilities, limited only by your imagination and the design of the original database file structures. This brings us to the conclusion of Module 1 of this segment, in which we covered the creation and use of view queries using single and multiple database files. Additional exercises and a quiz appear in your workbook. Complete them before moving on to Module 2, in which we'll look at update queries. Now that we've seen how to access and filter our data with a view query, let's learn how to change data with an update query. Suppose, for example, that our company's profits were way up, so we were considering giving all our customers a 10% rebate on their purchases for the preceding year. In order to calculate the rebate, we could take the prices listed in the sales database file and reduce them all by 10%. An update query would quickly allow us to do just that. To create our update query, we first highlight Sales, then open it by pressing Enter twice. To create our query, we press Tab and Enter. To replace all our prices at once, we press Alt-U for the Update menu and S for Specify Update Operation. The first choice listed is Replace. There are 3 other operations we can perform this way. Append, which would allow us to copy many records from one database file to another. Mark, which would allow us to delete multiple records. And Unmark, which would allow us to restore previously deleted records. Since our choice is already highlighted, we now press Enter. DBase recognizes that we are creating an update query and asks us if we'd like to proceed. We press P for Proceed, and the view file skeleton disappears. With Replace, our next step is to determine what field we'd like information replaced in, and with what. Since our refund is across the board, we don't have to set any conditions. All we have to do is replace the values listed in price unit with 90% of their current values. To do that, we first have to access the price unit field. We press Tab 4 times to reach price unit. To indicate what we'd like the current values replaced with, we type the statement with price unit asterisk period 9. In other words, we're asking DBase to replace the value in the price per unit field with 90% of its current value. Now all that remains is for us to actually perform the update. An update query, however, doesn't have to be performed as part of its creation process. If we're not certain that we actually want to go through with the rebate, we can store this file and perform the changes at some future date, or not perform them at all. Let's store this file for now. First, we press Alt-L and E. Then we type 10% price rebate for the description. And conclude the description with Enter. To exit and save the file, we press Alt-E and S. Then type rebate as the file name and press Enter. After a few seconds, we'll return to the control center. Notice that rebate, like all update queries, has been marked with an asterisk to distinguish it from view queries. To actually perform our update query, we use the down arrow to highlight it, or press End. Then press Enter. A menu appears with several options. To see what it is we'll be changing, let's press D for Display Data. If you're in the edit mode, like me, F2 takes us to the Browse mode, and we can quickly scan the price unit data. If all goes well, these figures will soon be 10% less than they currently are. We press Escape to return to the control center, and Enter to re-access the update menu. This time, we press R to run the update. DBase asks us just one last time if we're absolutely sure about this, since some update queries change the data in ways that can't be easily restored. We press Y for yes. After a few moments during which DBase makes the requested alterations, we'll return to the control center. When we press F2 now, the displayed data now indicates all the slashed prices. It worked. The prices have all been reduced by 10%. Escape returns us to the control center. This brings us to the conclusion of Module 2, in which we covered the design and use of update queries. Additional exercises and a quiz appear in the workbook. Please complete them before you proceed. This also brings us to the close of our query segment. In Module 1, we cover the design and use of view queries. In the next segment, we'll see how to print all this information on paper. See you there. This segment covers the creation, design, and use of reports and labels, the two basic ways that DBase-4 can be used to send our data to a printer for hard copy. We'll cover the creation of a simple report, a form letter, and a basic mailing label configuration. We'll be using the same files as last time, those found in Stat 5. If you haven't completed all the exercises up to now, you can use the catalog called Stat 6 instead. Please pause the tape now to load the appropriate catalog before we begin. Having all our information stored electronically in DBase is certainly handy, but even in the computer age, there are often situations, meetings, memos, reports, and so on, which require the use of paper. For that reason, DBase-4 allows us to easily design and create hard copies of our data. Using the report design screen in DBase-4 gives us a great deal of flexibility in terms of how we'd like our data arranged for printing. In addition to selecting which fields we'd like printed, we can group related data, perform statistical operations, create new calculated fields, and even insert data into form letters. To see how the process works, let's start by creating a yearly sales report that will look at the data in our sales database, calculate the total amount per sale, and present a sum of our gross income. This may sound complicated at first, but you'll be surprised at how simple it really is. To begin, unless the file is still open from the last segment, we highlight the sales database, then press Enter twice to bring it into the active area. To create a report file, we press the right arrow 3 times. To reach the Create option on the Report panel, then press Enter. The Report Design screen instantly presents us with a quick layout option. But before we lay out our report, let's see what the work surface looks like. To exit this menu temporarily, we press Escape. And we're at the work surface. The report design surface consists of representations of the 5 segments, or bands, that are used to compose DBase-4 reports. The first band is the page header. This line will contain information that will appear at the top of each and every page, such as the field names or report page number. Next, we see the report intro, which can contain any type of information we'd like to use to introduce our data. The intro can be as long as a page or take up just a portion. Next is the heart of the report, the detail band, which will contain the actual data. Fourth is the report summary, which, like the report intro, provides a writing space for any concluding comments. The final band, the page footer, contains any information we'd like to print at the bottom of each page. The menus on the report design screen provide many options for arranging data, and also include some pre-designed options which allows us to create standardized reports in a matter of seconds. To activate the quick layout mode, we access the layout menu with Alt-L. Then press Q. The 3 design options we're presented with are column layout, which will display the data in horizontal rows, form layout, which will duplicate the edit screen layout, and finally, mail merge, which allows us to produce form letters. For our yearly sales report, let's select column layout with a C, and take a look at what changes this creates on the work surface. The page header now contains the page number, current date, and field names. The detail band contains all the file's fields, and the summary band contains 2 calculated fields which would display a sum of the data in their respective columns. Most of the selections are fine for our purposes, but a few things should be added, a few deleted, and a few changed. On this work surface, DBase can be used much like a word processor, using the cursor to exit and enter the different bands and make changes. Since our data will only take up 1 page, there's no reason to have a page number in the header. To delete it, we press the down arrow twice to position the cursor on the appropriate line in the band, then hold Control and press Y to delete the line. Similarly, we don't need a date, so we press Control Y again to delete that as well. Some of our field descriptions could be a little clearer, so let's change them next. To put our column headings in all caps, let's press the caps lock key now. Next, we press the down arrow once to reach the date column heading, then type sale and press space. Next, we press the right arrow 5 times, followed by delete 4 times to change cust number to number. Next, we press the tab key 5 times, followed by the left arrow 4 times, and type unit space for unit price. Now, we'll move the cursor to the following U and press the delete key 6 times. press space, then hold Shift and press 3. So it reads number units. Note that changing the field names in our report header doesn't actually change the field names in the database. They remain the same unless we alter the database file structure. Our database currently lists the price per unit and the number of units sold, but it doesn't give us a total dollar figure for the sale, something we might want in a sales report. Fortunately, we can add a calculated field that will do just that. So let's type in a header for it now. We press End to reach the end of the line. Press space twice and type total. To actually add our new field, we first have to position the cursor where we'd like the field to appear. So we press the down arrow 4 times to reach the detail band. Then we press the left arrow 5 times to position the cursor directly below the header. To add the field, we access the field menu with Alt-F and press A for Add Field. Shortly, we're presented with a list of fields that we can add. We'll be creating a new calculated field, so we press the right arrow to reach the Create option under Calculated and press Enter. This field creation menu allows us to specify the data needed for our new field. First, to name the field, with the highlight on Name, we press Enter, type S total for sales total, and press Enter again. Next, we'll define an arithmetic expression for this field, which will multiply the units sold by the price per unit to produce the figure for our total field, just as we did when creating our data entry form in segment 4. As we noted earlier, DBase4 recognizes a variety of symbols for use in expressions, including field names and an asterisk for multiplication. To access expression, we press the down arrow twice and Enter. To create our desired result here, being careful to type our field names correctly for an exact match, we type price unit asterisk no units. Instead of typing the expression directly, we could also have picked the field names from a list by pressing Shift F1. But for now, we're finished. So let's press Escape to remove the field list and Enter to enter the expression. A quick press of Control-End returns us to the work surface with our new field displayed. Now, let's make a few more changes. These 2 fields in the report summary band that tally the total amounts purchased are useless figures, since they represent a sum of the individual units sold and a dollar sum of all the individual unit prices. It's sort of like adding apples and oranges. To delete them, we press the down arrow twice to enter the summary band, Home to reach the beginning of the line, and Control-Y to delete the entire line and its contents. One summary which would be useful here is a sum of the new total field. That would present us with a dollar total of all our sales. To enter this new field, we press Enter to start a new line, the down arrow to enter it. Tab 7 times, type total and a colon, followed by a space. To add a summary field here, we again access the Fields menu with Alt-F and choose A to add a field. This time, we press the right arrow 3 times to move to the Summary panel, which lists the different types of summaries we can create. Scanning down the list, we can see options that will count the number of entries, calculate an average or even a standard deviation. Here we press S for sum and enter. We press enter again and type the field name sales sum and enter. With our name in place, we press F for field to summarize on, and a list of fields appears. To highlight the S total field, we press the right arrow once and press enter. Now that that's done, we press Control End to return to the work surface. We're almost done, but now we should take a moment to enter a file description and save our work. To add a description, we press Alt-L and E, then type yearly sales and press enter. To save the report, we press Alt-L and S. Type Y sale and press enter to save the report file. DBase4 now converts our report information into its programming language by compiling it. It takes some time to generate the program code, so while we're waiting, let's make sure our printer is turned on and ready to accept our report file for printing. Now that the file has been saved, to print the report, we access the Print menu with Alt-P. To save paper, let's first choose View Report on Screen with V. After a few moments, our report appears on screen. Everything looks pretty good. Ideally, we'd want to move the total and number units legend a little to the right. You'll be asked to correct these as part of the workbook exercises. For now, let's press Escape, followed by any key to continue. To actually print the report, we press Alt-P, then choose Begin Printing with a B. A menu box which allows us to pause or cancel printing appears. After a few moments, our single-page report becomes a reality. Now that we're done, we press Alt-E, and since we've already saved the file, we can press A to abandon the changes and exit. And we're returned to the control center with our new report file in place. Now, let's use the report design screen to create a form letter that will inform each of the people in our customer list about our 10% price rebate. First, we highlight the customer database and press enter twice. To create our new report file, we press the right arrow 3 times and enter. Next, we press Q for quick layout and M for mail merge. In a mail merge layout, all the bands except for the detail band are closed. Now we simply construct our letter almost as though we were working with a word processor. Assuming we'll be printing our letter on business letterhead, the form letter should begin with the date, followed by the contact name and the company name and address. The report work surface can operate in what's called the word wrap mode to make typing in our text easier. Word wrap will be on or off depending on how it was last set. To make sure that word wrap is on for this band, we access the band menu with Alt-B. If the word wrap heading reads yes, press escape. If it says no, as it does here, press W to turn it on. In seconds, we're back on the work surface. Our next step will be to set the margins. Alt-W takes us to the Word menu, from which we choose M for Modify Ruler. With the cursor in the ruler at the top of the screen, we simply type in the appropriate character to set the margin. Pressing the left bracket sets the left margin. Now we'll hold the right arrow until it reaches the tab mark just past the 5. To enter the right margin here, we press the right bracket. To return to the detail band, we press the down arrow. Now let's add a date to our letter. First, we position the cursor where we want the date by pressing the space bar until we're under the down arrow halfway between the 3 and the 5 in the ruler line. The report design screen comes equipped with several predefined fields that allow us to easily insert certain information. For example, to add the date, we press Alt-F, A, the right arrow twice, Enter, and Control-End. Whenever the document is printed, this date code will become the current date. Now, let's press End and Enter twice to move to where we can begin the letter. Now, for the name and address of our form letter, we'll use the fields in our customer database. To add our first field, we press F5, just as we did on the query design screen. A list of available fields appears. We select the contact field and press Enter. A menu appears, which will allow us to adjust the display width. Since the contact will be the only thing on the line, there's no need to adjust it, so we just press Control-End to enter the field. Back on the work surface, the field now appears in the appropriate place. A press of End and Enter takes us to the second line. To quickly insert the company name, we press F5, N, Enter, Control-End, End and Enter. To add the address, city, state, and zip code fields, pause the tape and follow the instructions in your workbook. Return when you're ready. Welcome back. You should now be 2 lines below the address, where we'll now add a greeting and the body of the letter. Fields can be added anywhere in the text of our letter, creating the possibility of more personalized messages. To personalize our greeting, we type "Dear" and a space. Then add our contact field again with F5, CO, Enter, and Control-End. A press of End takes us to the end of the field, where we add a colon and press Enter twice. And type, "This is to inform you." That we will be rebating 10% of your total yearly bill. As our way of saying thanks. Then type a period. Notice that the text automatically wrapped around to the next line when we reached our right margin. Now we press Enter twice, followed by "Sincerely, G. Trudeau." This completes our form letter. Now we add a description with Alt-L and E. Informs customers of rebate. Then we press Enter. Next, we save the file with Alt-L and S Then type mail 1 and press enter. After a short wait, the file is saved. If your printer requires paper feeding or some other special procedure, pause the tape now and read the section in the workbook regarding the Control Printer option on the Print menu, which provides a great deal of flexibility for meeting your printing needs. Otherwise, to print our results, we press Alt-P and B. When it's finished, your printout should look like this one. One personalized letter for each record in the file. A press of Alt-E and A returns us to the control center. Now that we have a form letter, mailing labels might come in handy too. To create a label file for our customer database, we press the right arrow and enter. This takes us to the Label Design work surface. Since labels come in different shapes and sizes, we can alter the work surface dimension on the Dimension menu by pressing Alt-D. The predefined size listed here indicates the current label form is for labels 15/16 inches high, 3.5 inches wide, and on a roll that is one label across. Oddly enough, this matches the label we're currently using, so we can accept these defaults by pressing Escape. Now the process becomes simply one of adding fields. F5, CO, enter, and Control End adds our contact name. Now, pause the tape and follow the workbook instructions for adding the name, address, and city fields. Return when you're done. Welcome back. In a proper address, a comma generally separates the city and state. Unfortunately, the length of the city name varies, which one might think would sometimes result in extra spaces between the city name and the comma. Fortunately, when we place a field on the label work surface, DBase automatically trims the field to match the data that appears within it. So now, if we type a comma and a space, we can rest assured that it will always appear directly after the city. F5, S, enter, and Control End adds state, then a space, and F5, Z, enter, Control End adds the zip code to complete our label. For our description, we press Alt-L and E, then type labels for mail 1. And enter. We then press Alt-L and S and name the file label 1 and press enter. After a few moments, we're back at the design screen. To view our labels, we press Alt-P and V. After a few moments, we see the labels displayed on screen. Let's press any key to continue. To actually print our labels with the label forms loaded into our printer, we press Alt-P and B. If all goes well, your label should look like this. We return to the control center with a quick press of Escape and Y. This brings us to the conclusion of our segment on report printing, in which we covered the creation, design, and printing of a simple report, a form letter, and a label file. Additional exercises and a quiz appear in the workbook. Please complete them on your own. This also brings us to the end of our basic DBase 4 course. In this course, we've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time, and yet we've only begun to tap into the data management possibilities of this powerful, flexible tool. We hope we've given you a strong base for continued experimentation. The variety of design features provides an ample opportunity for creative exploration. If you need a refresher, feel free to review the appropriate sections of this learning system. For those of you who want to learn more, Microvideo has also produced an advanced DBase4 course, which covers macros, basic programming, applications, and the structured query language. We hope you've enjoyed our basic course, and thank you for selecting a Microvideo product. Microvideo also has learning systems available for Lotus 123, WordPerfect, DOS, Microsoft Excel, and many others. Perhaps we'll see you there. In the meantime, goodbye.